In Part 5 of Lecture 2, we will discuss parameter passing and returning results. In this example, we're going to write a function to calculate x to the nth power, and we're going to write a driver for it, a driver being a main program whose sole purpose is to test the function. Our algorithm for this function is fairly straightforward. Just as we set total initially to 0, we will set the product initially to 1. And as long as n is greater than 0, we will multiply the product by x and subtract 1 from n. We begin the program, as usual, by writing import Java util scanner, allowing us to take input from the keyboard. We begin the class with public class power and an open brace. And before writing the main method, we write a comment, a program to calculate 4 cubed, using a function called power. Our main method begins with public static void main string args, and after the open brace, we declare our variables. Double x, y, because x and y both will be doubles, int n. We're working with an integer exponent, so let's write it that way. X equals 4.0, n equals 3, y equals 1.0. Power, and afterwards in parentheses, x comma y comma n. And lastly, we will write system out println, the answer is y. And then we write a close brace for the method. We begin the method power by writing a comment. Power calculates y equal to x to the nth power. The header, public static void power, open parenthesis, double y comma, double x comma, int n, close parenthesis, open brace. Inside the method, we write y equals 1.0, and then while, open parenthesis, n is greater than 0, close parenthesis, open brace, y equals y times x, and n equals n minus 1. After the close brace, we write system out println, our result is y, a close brace for the function, and a close brace for the program. We actually print the result in two places, in the method power, and after we return from power, we print it in the main program as well. Now, in both cases, we should get the same answer, 64. The problem that we see is that the main program returned the answer is 1. That was the value before we went into power. It should not be the value when we return from it, but it is. The reason is that communication using parameters in Java is in one direction, and that while the main method will successfully communicate its value to power, main method does not listen to power communicating anything back. When we pass a value as a parameter from the method that is doing the calling to the method being called, what we're doing is passing it by copying the values of the parameter as we had them in the calling method into the method being called. Copying the value like that is called passing by value, because it's the value itself being passed. Because we are using a copy of the value stored in another location, the original is unaffected, therefore it doesn't change, and therefore we will see no change. Some methods exist specifically to produce one particular value. And returning that one particular value is all of what that method is about. Methods like this are frequently called functions in many programming languages. What we will need to do in this case is have the method explicitly pass back the value that it's calculating. When we are talking functions normally, not methods, but specifically functions, the expectation is that it is all about producing some value that is returned to the main method or to some other method, as you can see in the line below. Average equals calc average x, y, z. The data type of the result from the function is also called the function's type. Functions that produce an integer are called integer functions. Functions that produce a double value are called double functions. Functions that do not produce a result at all are called void functions. When we write public static void print square int x, the word void there is telling us that there is no expectation that the function is returning a value. We can write a function that returns a result by replacing the word void with a different data type. Now we have public static double average 3 int a, int b, int c. Now inside the method as you see it here, we have public static double average 3 int a, int b, int c, and afterwards an open brace. In the method I have double sum mean. I now write sum equals a plus b plus c. Then mean equals sum divided by 3, and return mean. Mean is the value that will be sent back to the main program. The syntax for a return statement is return and then an expression. Return statements don't just use variables or constant literal values. They can take expressions as well. All the following are perfectly valid. Return true. Return 35.4. Return sum divided by 3. Obviously, the result would have to match the type that the function is said to return in the function's header. Let's write a pair of functions that will find the minimum of two values a and b, and another one that will find the maximum of two values a and b. The initial algorithm for maximum would be return the larger of a and b. We can refine this a little to get if a is greater than b, return a, else return b. Now the question is, what if they're the same? And clearly in that case we would return b. It doesn't matter which one of the two we return if the two values are the same. For a minimum, we'll simply replace the greater than sign with the less than sign. The function maximum now becomes public static double maximum double x double y. If x is greater than y, return x, else return y. We are now going to rewrite the payroll program. Everything you see so far in the main method will remain exactly as it was before. We will declare our variables, ask for the pay rate, and ask for the hours worked. Here you see that I changed how I calculate the gross pay. I have a function call, pay equals gross hours, comma, rate. Below I have the method gross. I start with a comment, gross, calculate the gross pay. Public static double gross, double hours, double rate, and an open brace to begin the method. Double pay. The comment, if hours exceed 40, pay time and a half. If hours is greater than 40, pay equals 40 times rate plus 1.5 times rate times the difference of hours minus 40. Else, pay equals rate times hours. And lastly, return pay. Notice, please, that I've used the terms function and method here interchangeably. In Java, a function would simply be a method that returns a value, and the term itself has no significant difference here compared to what it is in Java, where there actually is a difference. The reserved word return serves two purposes. it tells the computer the value to return as the result. It also tells the computer to leave the method immediately, and it will do this even if the method does not have a value to return. You notice below in the method gross that this time, after I have if hours is greater than 40, return 40 times rate plus 1.5 times rate times open parenthesis hours minus 40 close parenthesis semicolon. Below it I have a simple statement, return rate times hours. I don't need the word else here because due to the return immediately after the if the expression were true, there is no way that I would get to that final return. Now we can rewrite the method power by telling the main program in the header that it will be returning a double value. And the header will now read public static double power double x int n. You'll notice that there is one change in the main method in the driver for power. Whereas before I had power, open parenthesis, y comma x comma n, close parenthesis semicolon. Now I simply have y equals power, open parenthesis, x comma n, close parenthesis semicolon. It's very clear from this that there is a value associated with power that is being assigned to y. Power looks a little different from before. I now have public static double power double x int n. The additional variable here is called prod. Prod is initially set to 1. And while n is greater than 0, prod equals prod times x, and n equals n minus 1. I'll print it again by writing system out println, our result is prod, and then I will return prod, a close brace for the method and a close brace for the program. Let's take a look at the output from the new version of power. Our result is 64, the answer is 64. The value that I actually have in the method is 64, and what gets returned to the main method that the main method now has is also 64. Using the result, I have now achieved two-way communication. On one hand, I use a parameter to pass a value to the method, and I use the return to return a value back to the main method, to the main program.